throughout Europe, we encounter a very unfortunate pattern. We encounter, for instance, crime, then virtue signaling statements that are empty, that are expressing sympathy about the crime. Then we have the crime being treated as an isolated incident perpetrated by someone with mental illness and not indicating a pattern, allegedly. And then we have statements and headlines from mainstream media and politicians scaremongering about the far right. And we had, again, this pattern this last week in Germany. Now, before we say a bit more about this, we could... you could consider support. If you want to support us, you could consider becoming a subscriber in Lotus with just as little as £5 a month, or you can use our donate button here. We really need your support. We're demonetized from YouTube, and we are all just all of this rests on our subscribers. So thank you very much, and consider this. Right, so we need to talk a bit about what happened in Solingen in Western Germany. There have been lots of footages showing explicit images, and I'm not going to show it. I found this, and it says that there have been 9 people stabbed at a festival last Friday. I think the number is more. We have 3 people who were killed by stabbings, and 8 people who have been wounded and are in serious condition. And this happened at a festival of diversity in Solingen in Germany. Now, that's ironic, but not in a good sense, not in a happy sense, of course. It's in the sense that a lot of people, including us, we have been warning that a lot of multiculturalist policies simply do not work.
Well,
and they
I
make
thought it was our
everyone
strength.
less safe.
Yeah, I thought diversity was our strength, not our weakness. Oh, that's funny, isn't it?
Well, one of the basic questions in politics is who is we, who is they, and what does our strength mean? And unfortunately, a lot of Europeans feel that their establishment is actually not having their back, and that the police, for instance, isn't ensuring public safety by enforcing the law. So this was a particularly unfortunate incident that happened last Friday, the 23rd of August. We have ISIS claiming the responsibility for it, and we have officers of special operations SEK storming an asylum hotel in Solingen and arresting a Syrian man. It's 300 meters from the murder scene. Here we look at footage from the special force unit that entered there. Now, let me say that there was a lot of speculation about the identity of the murderer, and evidence and testimony suggested that he was Arab-looking, and at some point, I think he confessed, and also the ISIS has claimed responsibility for it.
ISIS has been known to claim responsibility for things we can provably suggest that they weren't involved in, but if the man is from Syria, then that makes their claim a little bit more credible, although that will have to be verified over time, I think.
Yes, but we need to also bear in mind the symbolic nature of statements of involvement in these cases. But you're absolutely correct. I'm not contradicting you there.
Of course.
Now, we have another post here from Visegrad24 says, new information confirms that the Syrian asylum seeker and ISIS terrorist, again, that may be, as you say, that may be an allegedly, who killed 3 people during a diversity festival in Solingen, shouldn't have been in Germany. He was supposed to be deported in 2023, but he went into hiding instead. He reappeared a few months ago. By that time, the authorities decided that the deportation order had expired. What is it? Is it milk? So they decided to house him an open asylum center in Solingen, just 300 meters from where he executed his terror attack.
So there are multiple layers to this. Obviously, asylum seeker, right? And there are lots of questions about the legitimacy of these asylum seekers coming into Europe. But, people can say, well, there's actually, a war going on in Syria, but it's nothing to do with Europe. It should be nothing to do with Europe, certainly. Yeah. It's none of our business what goes on out there It shouldn't be our responsibility to take people in from a culture that is antithetical to ours. And this is what happens to us if we open the door with kindness. We get stabbed in the back, sometimes quite literally, by our guests.
Exactly. And we need to bear in mind that whenever we're talking about asylum seekers, a lot of people lie. A lot of people come from all sorts of places for economic reasons. And that shows that the policy of hosting asylum seekers prior to asylum being granted is absolutely disastrous.
Well, I don't think it's our obligation to host anyone. Why should we take in people?
Yes, so we had here Chancellor Olaf Scholz visiting the site of German stabbing rampage. Again, he made the statements of support to the victim. And here we have a very unfortunate statement that I think is guaranteed to make everyone very, very angry. We have German Interior Minister Nancy Faeser, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly. Apologies if I am not pronouncing it well. Makes a statement on yesterday's mass stabbing in which 3 people were killed and 8 were critically wounded. She appeals for people not to allow themselves to be divided and affected by those who want to sow hatred. I think that this is an absolutely narcissistic statement.
Yeah, just ignore what people have been doing to you for, 2 decades now, basically. Yeah, just ignore the fact that Muslims keep on murdering white people constantly. Ignore that trend. Just, ignore the fact that it's no longer safe to walk the streets in Europe anymore. Just ignore it. Get over it. Oh, yeah. People like this are utter scumbags. Just say, get over your concerns for your own safety. Don't you know it's more important that these third world savages come in and ravage your community?
And what we need to bear in mind and remind people of is that one of the ways to combat division and hatred in Europe is by deportations and borders that are being guarded, rather than just empty virtue signaling statements. Right, we have here an article by the European Conservative that illustrates a bit about the character of this politician. It says here, German Interior Minister refuses to quit after court overturns her magazine ban. She was the person who persecuted Compact magazine. And we have here left-wing German Interior Minister Nancy Faeser does not intend to resign despite suffering a humiliating court defeat. The government critical right-wing magazine Compact, which she banned last month for inciting hatred and aggressively propagating the toppling of the political order, has been allowed to resume its activities following a court ruling on Wednesday, August the 14th.
I can't remember the person that I covered who was involved in this, but I know it was a lady who was also, it turns out, sort of Antifa adjacent, or at least linked in some way to them. So very far left, maybe even communist. I'm not sure, I can't remember whether it's this lady or not.
So we have this interior minister talking about hatred and crime and all the incitement of hatred and aggressive propaganda and all this stuff. And all she had to say for the victims at the Diversity Festival in Solingen was that, well, we don't want hatred and division. Well, you would expect it. Okay?
I don't want terrorist attacks in my country.
Here, we have a very predictable reaction by mainstream media. This is BBC News for you. Title, Man surrenders and confesses to Germany stabbing attack. What is the intention? In order to say that all this is just to be blamed to men and male culture.
A misogyny attack, that's what it was. It wasn't that he was a Syrian national and asylum seeker. It was just a man.
Yep. Yes, and say this was a 26-year-old man called Isa Al-H. Right, so we have here British journalists from Sky News worry that Islamist terror attack in Germany in which 3 people were killed at a diversity festival could be exploited by the far right. And let us play this because we need to...
Something like this, you just really worry about how it could be used by those on the far right to stir up hatred.
Yes.
So that's the concern. The concern isn't for these people how to make England, continental Europe safer. The concern is how to not stir up whatever they mean by hatred.
Well, the regime narrative at the minute is that you've just got to accept these sorts of things. This is just part of your life now.
Yeah.
And that's how they try and get you to accept a lower standard of living is, well, this is just a reality now. You know, the adults are in the room. There's nothing you can do about it. Get over it. Maybe your kid will get stabbed, but you know, you've got to sacrifice them on the altar of diversity, because that is, you know, a religion you cannot question.
Exactly. And I think that you used, I would say that this is the new ideology, and ideologues don't care about facts. Any facts you give to ideologues, they'll find a way to twist them. And I think the best way to expose people like that is to answer them what would have to happen for you to accept that there is a problem with multiculturalism in Europe. I think that this is a very basic question that everyone should ask themselves when they espouse particular beliefs and they use it to explain things. And I know for me the answer would be, if I saw, and I'm not promoting multiculturalism, it's the exact opposite, but for me, for instance, parting ways with my beliefs would require me having first-hand evidence that, you know, crime is going down, that there aren't problems with integration, there are problems with assimilation, that host cultures aren't being destroyed, things like that.
A complete U-turn of what's going on at the minute.
Exactly.
Basically.
But because these things are happening, I'm criticizing multiculturalism. The question to these people should be, what must happen for you to claim that there is a problem with multiculturalism in Europe? The more they double down on this, and whenever we have victims, which is daily, I think it's daily by now, whenever they respond to that with scaremongering about the far right within quotation marks, what they show is that they really do not care about the victims. They absolutely don't care about the victims. Right, so we have here footage from this is from a Greek account. I couldn't find footage from another account to translate, but it shows that there have been some reactions that I wouldn't call spontaneous by Antifa. Antifa there is going out and is chanting, you know, the mid-century Germans out, as if that's the response that is appropriate right now.
Yeah, if you're mad at stabbing innocent people, that must make you a National Socialist for some reason. Okay, that seems like a bit of a conflation there.
They actually show that they do not care about the victims. They don't care about daily violence committed in the name of multiculturalism, or permitted in the name of multiculturalism. And this shows all that there is to them, all the empty moralizing posturing and the narcissism behind it. Here we have around 100 people from the initiative Solingen for Diversity, after victims at a diversity festival in Solingen have gathered in front of the Asylum Hotel, where the suspected terrorists live, to protect it against possible far right-wing extremist attacks. However, the police knows nothing about any threat. Well, yeah, you have people who are being stabbed by Islamists, and the response is, well, the problem is the far right. Go figure. Meanwhile, though, while a lot of people were wondering about whether asylum hotels would be burned to the ground, we had in France a synagogue that was burned to the ground in La Grande Motte. Armed with a gun and draped in a Palestinian flag, the man masked with a keffiyeh detonated a gas cylinder and set the scene on fire with flammables. A policeman was wounded after a car exploded. So it looks like the people who were protesting against the alleged far right in Germany, they really have their facts wrong. But I think they don't care. Here we have another clip from that account I'm telling you, and it has footage from the opening of this festival in 2017, where it was a diversity festival, and people were saying there that this is a hymn to multiculturalism. There is no need for fear or borders. All refugees are integrating into the local community. All refugees are welcome. Now, whether this is true or false, personally I have no reason to doubt it. You would have guessed that it's a diversity festival, and this is the kind of Queer for Palestine things that is going on throughout the West.
It's turkeys voting for Christmas there.
Yeah, so we need to talk a bit about why this happens into the diversity festivals and why there is a particular effort from, you could say, the regime narrative to cover these attacks. But we'll say that in a minute. It says there are some people who are trying to defend the festival and say that the festival is called Festival of Diversity, but is a city festival for the celebration of the 650th anniversary of the foundation of the city of Solingen.
Surely there's a better name than the Festival of Diversity, though, surely.
Yeah, but this is also a pathetic attack because it doesn't matter that this lasts for 650 years. It has been hijacked by far leftists, multiculturalists, who are just interested in just saying diversity is a strength. Anytime anything happens, that's what they're programmed to say. So we have some shocking federal police reports here that were published in the European Conservative. Definitely visit a website and read this article. I'll just give you some data. So they have here some numbers. Crime in 2023 in Germany rose by 12.5% relative to 2022.
Which is a massive increase in the space of a year.
Violent crime has increased by 10%.
The same again for that.
There's an average of 2,165 crimes per day. Violence in train stations has risen by 11%. Sexual assaults committed in stations have risen by 12%. Sexual violence has risen by 15%. You remember we have covered this very unfortunate case with the multiple instances of sexual abuse.
If the Scandinavian data is anything to go by, the Middle East are going to be topping the charts of that one, because in both Denmark and Sweden, they're normally the perpetrators of sexual assault.
Yeah. And pickpocketing incidents have risen by 16%. And these are official data by Germany. These are official data. It's not just some slop account that just came up with numbers. Right, so we need, and Gert Wilders says here that it's time to start deporting Syrian asylum seekers after the terror attack in Germany. All of Europe is bursting with refugees, many of whom are from Syria. Syrian terror suspects have also been arrested in asylum centers in the Netherlands. Why are we still letting them en masse?
Well, I also don't understand that if they're claiming an asylum from a war zone, why don't they go back when the war's over? Why do they get a right to stay in a country that's sheltered them at great cost? That's surely a greater cost again, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think that there is some the narrative right now is it's just naked. We can just demonstrate how false it is, and we can talk to people who aren't particularly well versed into what is going on, people that some call normies. We can reach out and just tell them that it's just a fact that this is going on, and they should open their eyes and open their minds that something may be wrong with multiculturalism. And I think that essentially we can capitalize leftist politics right now, or the politics of the far left, or wokeism if you want, in the following way: that wokeism involves the separation of the population into groups. We have groups of oppressors and oppressed. There are calls for social justice, which means that the allegedly oppressor groups need to be treated worse than the other groups. The other groups need to be treated preferentially in order to address historical injustices. And there is a particular lie, nowhere more evident than in the Solingen Stabbings, that the multiculturalist wokeism is promoting, that the groups that are under the banner of the protected groups are compatible. They're absolutely not compatible. We see them here. Every time these incompatibilities become evident, the regime narrative, the multiculturalist narrative, is doubling down on inventing a common enemy. This is the native Westerners, and is doubling down on the message that they are the enemy. So all of you unite under the banner of protected groups.
And of course,
they're not compatible.
This is all going on as a sort of means of creating a sort of client class of the native Europeans from global elites who can then better extract resources from them. I think that's why all of this is going on, is that they're basically setting things up to disenfranchise Europeans because, otherwise we're quite economically productive. And if they can transfer wealth from us to themselves, which they have been doing, and in fact the wealth transfer from everyday people to the global elite has been massive, and the left does point this one out. They just get the nature of it wrong. It's not capitalism that's doing that, and in fact I think that they may have deliberately thrown in that red herring. It's the fact that they're designing policies around tyrannising the native population, importing people in to suppress wages, making house prices more expensive, sort of increasing the cost of the assets, and also gaming the system in their favour through political lobbying, donating money to politicians for favourable treatment. This all has the effect of amplifying things, and so this all ties into a nice, neat scheme for them, whereby it's very profitable for a very, very small minority of people, but for everyone else, even some of the asylum seekers, it's going to cause chaos.
Yeah. And I think that basically wokeism and this narrative is a national security threat at this moment, because it brainwashes people into not looking at facts, the obvious facts, like the whole Queers for Palestine movement. This is just, it's suicidal empathy.
Hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast to the Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're putting out, you can go to the website and follow the series Comics Corner with Connor and Harry. And also, other than signing up, you can also donate. And if you want to see all of the other things we're putting out, you can follow us on Twitter. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.